Trada Studio has a number of powerful features to help you review a translation. The first thing you will do is open the document for review instead of the standard way, which is to open it for translation by selecting the option Open for Review from the ribbon, or from the right-click menu. Opening the document for review has a number of benefits when you review a file. First, the layout is changed to make the side-by-side editor more prominent, with comments displayed at the bottom. When I confirm the segments, they show approved status, instead of the translated status that you would see in translation mode. When I press Ctrl and Enter, I jump to the next non-approved segment, and I can also reject segments with this button. This allows me to move through the document smoothly, without having to remember whether I've reviewed particular segments, and I can track my progress as a reviewer, with the statuses at the bottom right, where I can see percentages for reviewed, rejected, and translated segments. These figures are also updated in the confirmation statistics, in the file and project views. In review mode, Track Changes is activated by default, so that any modifications that I make are tracked, as you can see here. The Track Changes option is in the Review tab, where I can turn it on and off. Final mode keeps the track changes in your segment hidden while you work on it, so that you see clearly what the results of your edits are. Turn Final mode off to display the final changes. There is a button for accepting or rejecting changes one by one or all at once. To add a comment to a piece of selected text, click the Add Comment button on the Review tab and place a comment on an entire segment, or right-click in a segment, and then click the Add a Comment button. Comments have modifiable scope and severity. I'm changing the severity level in this comment to Warning, which makes it display in a different color. Another very powerful review feature is the Display Filter, which allows me to display only segments matching certain criteria, such as those with comments or track changes. I can redisplay the segments by clicking Reset Filters. I can also display filters containing certain text in the source or target. A nice trick is to separate two words by the pipe symbol, which makes Display Filter show segments containing either one of them. When I close my document in review mode, I'm prompted to mark any unreviewed segments as approved. This is a quick way of completing a review, also possible by clicking Complete Review button. The Advanced Display Filter expands on the possibilities for filtering in the standard display filter. It includes 4 categories of filters, the first of which is Content. Content allows you to combine source and target searches so that you can check, for example, whether you've used a particular translation for certain source text content. Type in the text that you want to search, and click Apply Filter to display the corresponding segments. Your search criteria and the number of affected segments is displayed at the bottom of the filter. Click Clear to remove the search criteria. Filter Attributes features a list of segment criteria, such as statuses and match type. Similar to the one that you see in the standard display filter. The difference is that you can combine multiple filters to hone your search, adding and removing criteria with the arrow buttons. Here I'm looking for segments with translated status that I originally copied from the source. Under Comments, I can filter on the text in comments or by author or severity level. Under document structure, I can filter on headings, for example, to see whether I translated all the headings using the same verb form. I can save filters and I can load any previous ones with the buttons of those names. QA Checker will help you find the kinds of errors that you might otherwise overlook when you check your translation, such as additional spaces, repeated words, or incorrect numbers. To configure the QA Checker, go to the project settings and choose Verification and QA Checker 3. For example, I can check for inconsistent translations of the same segment. For any of the errors, I can change the severity level like this. I also check for repeated words in the target. Under punctuation, I'll flag multiple spaces, dots, and extra spaces at the end of the segment. I'll check that I've carried numbers over correctly and use the word list to add my own custom errors, such as hyphenated and non-hyphenated forms. Typing the item and click plus symbol to add it to the list. Once the criteria is set up, I can export like QA Checker profile for later reuse. It's important to note that the same verification settings are available on the file options, however, the settings and the file options will not affect the current or active project. They will take effect on projects that you create subsequently. To set the QA Checker up for the current project, use the project settings instead. Once set up, the settings will trigger alerts like this each time you confirm a segment containing an error. The errors are listed in the Messages window above the editor. If I double-click an error in the Messages window, it opens another window and allows me to correct the errors by clicking the Change button or using the Ignore button to disregard them. I can also correct the errors manually in the target segment content without having to go back into the segments themselves in the editor. To produce a report on the verification process, I can go to Batch Tasks and choose Verify Files. Here I'm doing this from the editor, but I could do it in the Files view or in the Projects view to run verification on all the files in the project. I complete the wizard and click Close. I can save my report as an Excel file for sending to another person. If you'd like to do a final read through your translation in MS Word, PowerPoint, or other native application, you'll find Retrofit very useful. If you want to put in place different QA settings with different language pairs, go to Project Settings, Language Pairs, and do this under the individual language pair. With Retrofit, you can make small changes to your translation in its native application and then quickly update your bilingual file with these changes, cutting out the need for duplicating that work in Studio. Bear in mind that Retrofit is suited to small amendments to wording made within the existing document structure. It's not intended to handle structural changes such as merging or reordering sentences. I've saved my translation to its native format, in this case MS Word, and I'm now making some small changes. I can make the changes with or without using track changes in Word. To import the changes back into my bilingual file, I choose Update from Bilingual Review on the Review tab from or from Batch Tasks. Under Review Target File, I select my corrected Word document and click Finish and then Close. When I reopen the bilingual file in Studio, the changes I made in Word are now present in Track Changes. I'm going to accept the changes before the final step, which is to update my translation memory with these changes. Instead of doing this manually by reconfirming the segments in the editor, I choose Batch Tasks and Update Main Translation Memories. This will update any segments in the TM with the segment status as we see checked here. Studio comes with 4 pre-configured TQA templates. First, we go to File, Setup and Project Templates and then choose Import to import one of the preset templates. Here I am using the TAOS one. Now I select a template and use Edit and Export Settings. I name my TQA settings file and save it. To import my TQA settings to my project, I go to Project Settings under Station Quality Assessment, I choose Profiles and import my TQA settings file. Now I can take categories to the settings that have been imported, each of which I can edit or remove, and I can also add new categories of my own. The same applies to the severity scores and document types. Once I reconfigure the settings, I can export them as a new settings file. To assess a translation, go to the Review tab and change Track Changes to assess quality. Select some text and right-click and then choose Add TQA. In the window that opens, I can add comments and choose a category and severity. I can associate problems in the text by selecting the corresponding items in the source and target and clicking Apply Selection to help the person receiving the assessment later. To complete the assessment, I go to the Home tab and click Complete Review. The Complete Review window shows me the results and whether it's a pass or fail. I can overwrite the results and add a comment for the evaluee. I click Finish to complete the assessment. To create a report with the results, I choose Batch Tasks and Translation Quality Assessment, and then complete the wizard. Report details the occurrence of categories and severities and give the details of each suggestion made by the assessor. I can save the report as an Excel file. To act on the assessment with a TQA file open in the editor, The evaluee clicks in the Tekiya window and double-clicks the item to open the window showing the details which he or she can then act on.